take her down. Let's close the eyes, put our attention on the silence that's always there deep in the mind. Connect with that silence and become the silence. You are the silent witness. As the silent witness, listen to the words of the Yoga Vasishta. Book 4, Chapter 8, continuing with verse 15. It was at the end of the merit of their acts that they were doomed to return to earth, shorn of their heavenly beauty, and fine features, being deprived of this heavenly seat and vehicle, and bereft of his godlike form and features. Shukra was overcome by deep sorrow. Like a hero falling in the field of warfare. His great grief at his fall from heaven to earth broke his frame as if into 100 fragments, like a waterfall falling on stony ground and breaking into 100 streams below. We find ourselves as humanity witnessing what can happen when someone with the greatness of Shukra descends back into the earth plane for another round of reincarnations to attempt to earn his way back to moksha and freedom again. There is a being that has recently in terms of thousands of years, but recently fell from heaven, just like Shukra. And that individual is now leading the charge to destroy humanity. He goes by the name of Lucifer. Lucifer was once a great enlightened being living in the celestial regions. And his ego got the best of him again. So he had to leave. Now he's in charge of his own little plan to exact revenge for this self-caused exile from the celestial regions. Very much like the case of Shukra. Now, Shukra didn't go into a revengeful act. When he reached the earth plane, he had lost all of his intelligence, but Lucifer, his retained his intelligence, his memory, and a little bit of his ability to understand what's going on. He has no power, of course, over the universe. Definitely not in the category of Vishnu or Brahma. Basically just a fallen, enlightened being. Working to get some revenge. Ego totally overwhelmed this being. You can imagine anyone wanting to get revenge for being stupid and making countless mistakes and losing his enlightenment. And we can understand Lucifer by the fact that, number one, he has no power whatsoever to do anything. He does have a little bit of memory, a little bit of knowledge of how the universe works. And using that information on how the universe works, he has concocted a number of schemes based on trying to trick and fool the humanity on Earth. All, of course, in accord with the karma of the humanity on Earth. So nothing that's happening right now is to be considered wrong or broken or terrible or even unexpected. Everything that's happening now was known to be happening at this time by the celestial beings. Krishna even predicted it over 5,000 years ago. So Lucifer has only one tool, and that's a little bit of his knowledge of how the universe works and how he can concoct various schemes to trick and fool people into hurting themselves and creating more misery in their lives. And so that's what he does. So now we have this COVID pandemic, and we have 5G, which is also just a trinket in terms of ability to really do anything, but it is like a weapon, can be used as a weapon, and will be and is used as a weapon by the people who think they're in charge. Fortunately, we have a little bit of knowledge as well, so we understand what's going on. It is really extremely obvious that the only thing that governments have is propaganda, trickery, creating problems through the ignorance of the people that they are trying to govern, and then pretending to be the hero to solve the problem. And of course, whatever they use to solve the problem, that just makes everything worse. So they have the weaponized injections that are killing people, putting them into a state of early death. If nothing is done, the people will literally destroy themselves. But of course, it's not going to be that. We're not going to be in a case of doing nothing. Vishnu is in charge of maintaining the universe for the benefit of those jivas who are here trying to figure out what their life is all about. So let's look at another perspective of what can happen if we make this mistake of losing this opportunity that we have now. We have a great opportunity, a rare and great opportunity. We can achieve Brahman consciousness in this lifetime. If we do, no danger of becoming the next Shukra or Lucifer or whatever would be the name of the being that is making more and more mistakes in the celestial region, where it is very difficult to resist the beauty and the attractions and the wonder of the Maya that exists in the celestial region. Only if we can reach Brahman consciousness in this lifetime can we persist in our enlightenment once we get into the celestial regions. Otherwise, requires great vigilance. We must continue with our sadhana. We must be very careful. And we must be in this state for trillions of years. So it's really, really an incredible challenge. We don't want to waste this opportunity. Fortunately, everything is lined up so that we don't have to waste it. We're going to be able to sustain our human physiology for as long as we need to make the progress in our sadhana, the balancing of our individual karmic choices perfect. So we have this really marvelous blessing now. Continuing with verse 18. With their emaciated bodies and sad minds, they wandered about in the air like birds without their nest. Afterwards, their disembodied minds entered into the network of lunar beings. Then, in the form of molten frost or rainwater, they grew as vegetables on earth. Some of these vegetables were prepared and eaten by a Brahmin in the land of Dasarna, the confluence of 10 streams. The substance of Shukra changed to the semen of the Brahmin, and then he conceived a son by his wife. The boy was trained in the society of ancient sages to practice the rigorous austerities. And he dwelt in the forest of Meru for a whole Manvantara, observing his holy rites. There he gave birth to a male child of human figure in a doe, to which his mistress was transformed in her next birth, and became exceedingly fond of the boy, to the neglect of his sacred duties. So we see again and again the dangers of being embedded in the samsara, how we lose our intelligence, we lose our ability to discriminate properly, to even connect with the silent witness. And we start off on another crazy lifetime of creating more and more karma for ourselves. 23. He constantly prayed for long life, wealth, and learning of his darling, and thus forsook the constancy of his faith and reliance in providence. This mention of constancy of his faith and reliance in providence is obviously to point out that he fell from living in the moment, from being in the now, from being connected with the silent witness, and became completely embedded in his lifetime as a human being. We're not, of course, human beings. We're not embedded in this life. We figured this one out. Now we have to be careful that we don't forget it with all the temptations around. Thus, his falling off from the thought of heaven to those of earthly success of his son made his shortened life an easy prey to death, just as inhaling of air by the serpent. His worldly thoughts weakened his understanding and caused him to be reborn as the son and successor of the king of Madras. Having long reigned in his kingdom of Madras, by eliminating all his enemies, he was overtaken at last by old age, as the lotus flower is stunted by frost. The king of Madras was released of his royal body by his desire for asceticism, whereby he became the son of a hermit in the following birth in order to perform his austerity. He retired to a bank in the meandering Ganges River, and there, being devoid of all his worldly anxieties and cares, absorbed himself in tapas. Thus, the son of Brigu, having passed in various forms in his successive births, according to the desires of his heart, remained at last like a fixed tree on the bank of a running stream. Chapter 9. Description of Shukra's body during his austerities. Vasishta related. As Shukra was indulging his reveries in this manner, he passed insensibly under the flight of a series of years which glided over him in the presence of his father. At last, his body withered away with age. After the inclement sun, winds, and rain, it fell down on the ground like a tree torn from its roots. Now, what is the purpose of reading about Shukra's adventures? Obviously, it's because we've all had these adventures. We have all been Shukra at some point. We like to think of ourselves as maybe virgin jivas. Oh, this is our first time of going through all the cycles and learning about enlightenment and doing the sadhana and achieving enlightenment. But no, we have all been enlightened, lost it, and started over again many, many times, not just once. And so the mountain ranges of karma that we've created are there. And in the Yoga Vasishta, we read about these stories, and they enliven some of these old, buried karmic traces. Then we can balance them. We can only balance karmic traces that we become aware of. This is why when we're doing meditation, for example, when we're performing dharana, we have so many thoughts. We're becoming aware of the karmic traces that are being touched by the frequency of the mantra. And there is speaking out who they are as they balance. Continuing with verse 3. In all his former births, his mind thirsted after a fresh pleasures and enjoyments. Just like a deer hunts from forest to forest after fresh vegetation. He underwent repeated births and deaths in his wanderings in the world in search of its enjoyments. He seemed like something whirled about in a mill or a turning wheel, until at last he found his rest in the cooling beach of the rivulet. Now the disembodied spirit of Shukra remained to reflect on his past incarnations in all the real and ideal forms of his imagination. It thought of its former body on Mandara Mountain and how it was reduced to a skeleton of mere bones and skin by the heat of the sun and his austerity. It remembered how the wind, instrument of its lungs, breathed out the joyous music of his exemption from the pain of action. Seeing how the mind is plunged in the pit of worldly cares, the body seems to laugh at it by showing the white teeth of the mouth in derision. The cavity of the mouth, the sockets of the eyes, the nostrils and ear holes in the open face are all expressive of the hollowness of human and heavenly body. The body sheds the tears of its eyes in sorrow for its past pain and austerity. Just like the sky rains after excessive heat to cool the earth. The body was refreshed by breeze and moonbeams, just as woodlands are renovated by cooling showers in the rainy season. It remembered how its body was washed on the banks of mountain streams by waterfalls from above, and how it was daubed by the flying dust and the dirt of sin. Now we will remain established as the silent witness. Starting the practice of Trimana Sanyama on the esoteric Maha Mantra, and observe how the karmic traces enlivened by today's readings are going to be balanced. Jai Gurudev.